This video is made possible by our generous supporters on Patreon. Check out patreon.com/NWR for all the details. Hey everybody, I'm John Reardon and you're watching NWR TV. One of my favorite Wii U launch titles recently released in a remastered form on Nintendo Switch. So join me as we take a look at the excellent Darksiders 2 Definitive Edition for Nintendo Switch. And yes, it is the Definitive Edition. I know, it's dumb, but there's just no stopping THQ Nordic at this point. As a Nintendo fan, this release makes for an interesting point of comparison between the Switch and the Wii U. Darksiders 2 was a launch title for the Wii U, having just launched on Xbox 360 and PS3 a few months earlier. Switch, on the other hand, is already a couple years into its life. The Definitive Edition was initially released on Xbox One and PS4 in 2015. This is therefore an odd comparison between a contemporary launch title and a port of a 4-year-old remaster of a 7-year-old game. As such, this comparison shouldn't be taken to imply that one version is better than the other, but more as a look at how we port and manage limitations in 2012 versus 2019. Likely the first thing you'll notice comes in lighting. Now, it'd be very easy when you first take a look at it to just think the Definitive Edition, the Switch version, is simply washed out. In reality, it's just offering a much more realistic treatment of lighting and materials. The original version, in contrast, had an almost graphic novel style to it, with deep contrast in every scene, and almost constant rim lighting around characters. It was popular at the time. In comparison then, the changes in lighting within the remaster help the characters to sit more naturally in the environments. Just take a look at this shot of Death approaching the Crowfather. The lighting on Death in the Wii U version seems unnatural. It's just sort of coming from the ground and it doesn't quite make sense, as opposed to the much softer, more diffused lighting in the Switch version. While in general, I personally prefer the look of the remaster in most instances, I could absolutely understand being partial to the original style. It looks cool. It certainly has its own unique vibe to it. And while I'd normally comment on losing something of the original designer's artistic vision, much of the original developers worked on this port via their new studio, Gunfire Games, the same studio that would go on to develop Darksiders 3. And by the way, Darksiders 3 on Switch when? As part of the remaster, the Switch version sees much more thorough shadow coverage and some nice god rays present throughout the game. In order to adapt these changes to the limited hardware of the Switch, distant moving shadows are often rendered at a lower frame rate compared to the same shadows on Wii U. Shadow resolution can also be adjusted dynamically based on the load in a given scene. The resolution of the Switch version as a whole is also dynamic, as compared to the locked resolution of the Wii U version. Now, most of the time the Switch version still manages to output a significantly higher resolution than the Wii U version, but in certain taxing areas, the resolution can actually drop below what is present on Wii U. Now, before you freak out about the Switch version running worse than the Wii U, I can already see the headlines, we'll need to take a couple things into account. First of all, the Switch is indeed running the definitive version of Darksiders. That means enhanced lighting, both in terms of placement and shadows, along with improved texture work and improved polygon counts on various environmental details. Just look at these cliffs in the background when you first arrive in the Maker's world. There's a huge difference in geometry. Perhaps an even greater change is the addition of more and dynamic foliage along with trees in the field a little later in that same world. It manages to do all of this with a mostly locked 30 frames per second, outside of a few fringe cases. The Wii U version, on the other hand, in exchange for that locked resolution, suffers from constant frame tears, along with slowdown during heavy combat. Just look at this shot as we first enter this village. Now compare it to the Switch version and you'll see what I mean. It's unfortunate that THQ went under so soon after the Wii U version's release, so it remained in this state without continuing updates. That being said, it did a great job of utilizing the gamepad with a large map, customizable extra buttons, and inventory management. It's fascinating to see the differences in how we handle ports like this across 2 generations. Instances where 7th generation machines would fall back on disabling VSync and making way for torn frames are often today handled with a variable resolution. Meanwhile, it seems that the visual preferences of the artists have evolved as time has gone on as well. Regardless, Darksiders 2 on Switch is an excellent port of an excellent game that overall seems to hold up better than the original release on Wii U. I'm curious as to which artistic presentation you prefer in terms of lighting, so let me know in the comments. If you'd like to know more about my thoughts on Darksiders 2 Definitive I can't say it. Darksiders 2 on Switch, check out my full review at nintendoworldreport.com. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you enjoyed the video, maybe leave a like, and if you want to join our Discord, there's a link in the description. This video was made possible by our generous supporters on Patreon. Did you know that Nintendo World Report is funded directly by fans like you? When you support Nintendo World Report on Patreon, you get immediate access to multiple exclusive podcasts every month, exclusive Discord channels, an early look at select content, and more, all for as little as $1 a month. Check out patreon.com/NWR for all the details.